Hey, tonight we're once again stepping into the future with a fascinating look at the advances in fighting something that will impact all of us in some way: cancer. An amazing amount of research and progress is being made in the fight against cancer right here in Portland at the Knight Cancer Institute at Oregon Health and Sciences University. How are they doing it, and what role is artificial intelligence playing? That, my friend, is our big story tonight. When we talk about something like cancer, I know it can be scary. I'll bet every one of you knows somebody who has had it in the past or will have it. Maybe it's even you. But as our story last night reminded us, progress is being made by brilliant researchers like Dr. Brian Druker and his team here in Portland. And there are hopeful examples. Here's an email that came in after the show from Duncan and Molly. He wrote, "For a decade, my wife Molly has benefited from the science of Dr. Druker and his team for the treatment of her leukemia. Your interview was personal for us. The added years of grandkids and the joys of life. How do you thank someone for the gift of time?" Great point. As I mentioned, the work is being done by Dr. Druker and the team at the Knight Cancer Institute. It's part of Oregon Health and Sciences University. The institute has a $1 billion endowment. Half of that paid for by Nike founder Phil Knight and his wife Penny. The other half came from taxpayers and a whole lot of companies who pitched in. I got a chance to interview Dr. Druker recently, and I asked him about that fund.
Well, thanks, Pat. Let me start by thanking the 10,000 people who made this possible by donating and matching Phil and Penny Knight $500 million to make $1 billion to invest in cancer research. And that's a huge responsibility, and we've taken that seriously. And we're breaking new barriers, new boundaries in what we call precision oncology, which is matching patients with the right treatment and early detection of cancer so we can identify cancer at its early and most curable stages. And we're making significant advances in both those areas as we promised.
Okay, and we'll get to that in a sec. But first, I think some folks at home may wonder, what do you do with $1 billion? I mean, does that go into an investment account, or what do you do with that?
Well, first of all, it's being invested over a decade, so it's not like there's a pile of gold sitting somewhere. But we put about $250 million into an endowment that will give off operating revenue year after year over a decade. So we're sustainable. But mostly what we put that into has been people and programs. $200 million came from the state of Oregon and Bonding Authority, and that built a building that now houses over 875 people who brought in the last decade over $1 billion in grant funding from external sources to the state of Oregon. But then we've recruited incredible talent, people that come and work on curing cancer here in Oregon. And that's been the best part of my job, is to bring that talent here and watch them create.
This is the Knight Cancer Institute Research Building. It's the place he's talking about, and it's where I conducted the interview with him. Dr. Druker also went on a recruiting binge, building a team that now numbers 1,500 people to play a role in some of the most advanced cancer research in the world. It's a big effort, and it brings pressure to show results. And I asked him for some of those results.
Well, a couple of big breakthroughs. Not only do we have the ability to target cancers, but we've also learned how to harness the power of the immune system. And although we weren't the center that discovered this, we certainly are using an enormous amount of immunotherapeutics. But an investigator working at the time in New York, I determined that when we develop cancer, our immune system, the cancer tells our immune system to put the brakes on. Don't go after that, just leave it alone. We've learned how to take the brakes off so the immune system says, hey, wait a second, that's a cancer, we better go kill it. And by reactivating the immune system to do its job to attack and kill cancer, we've had remarkably effective therapies. And the person who, one example that I give a lot of people is former President Jimmy Carter. He had metastatic melanoma to his brain. He's still alive, celebrating his 100th birthday over 5 years after what should have been a fatal diagnosis in less than 6 months to a year. Those are the sorts of treatments. And now what we're doing is we're using our smart analytics, also trying to figure out what's the immune system doing, and can we help trigger the immune system in better ways and combine them with these targeted therapies to get even better outcomes.
And I know you're talking to the 10,000 foot level, and I appreciate that, but is there, similar to the earlier question, a simple way you can explain how you're able to tell that the cancer is turning off the immune system and you tell the immune system, go get it? It's okay if it's too complicated.
No, basically what we do is we can actually look at the state of an immune cell. And if we do some very sophisticated profiling, we can determine whether it's in what we call a resting or inactive state or an activated state. And we can actually look at the switch between those two states and determine, okay, those immune cells are off, we treat, they've turned on, and they're doing their job.
He also points to artificial intelligence as a key tool now. It allows researchers to study the DNA sequences that make up our human genes, and that helps them to find clues to what's happening with the cancers. It's an exciting field that Dr. Druker and the Knight Cancer Institute are embracing. You've sort of already been talking about it, but what's the future? Where do things go from here?
Well, they go a couple of places. I still think we can do better at matching patients with the right treatments. And we're working quite a bit with any number of companies in the artificial intelligence realm, and we're actually hiring a large group, thanks to philanthropy, to establish what we call a Center for Biomedical Data Science in collaboration with our colleagues at the University of Oregon. Because we still think that there's answers that cancer could give us if we knew how to analyze the data better. So we can generate massive amounts of data, but I can sit down with the data and say, I think this is what we need to do, and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. Imagine if we had a computer that could tell us all the different algorithms that I can't see, and could say, why don't you try this? And maybe it'll work better. So if you combine a computer with my brain and other really bright people, we think we can do even better. But at the same time, we're also collaborating again with numbers of artificial intelligence companies, looking at how does cancer go from early, benign, gross, to a lethal malignancy. What does that trajectory look like? And how can we intervene? And I'll give you an example we're doing in prostate cancer. We have 10,000 prostate cancer biopsies from our collaborators in the United Kingdom with clinical follow-up. If we ask a pathologist, the people that read these biopsies, to grade those 10,000 prostate cancers, it would take them years to look at those 10,000. We can train a computer to look at a type of early stage prostate cancer, train it, and then it can go through those 10,000 samples in minutes. Wow. Then we can go back and train it on a slightly more advanced stage. And after we've trained it, it can go back and look for that in minutes. So now, instead of requiring years to do these analytics, it's days to minutes. And now we can start to say, okay, correlate that with the outcome and tell us which men you predict are going to progress and which men we could just leave alone. Those are the sorts of things that we're unlocking with these powerful analytical tools that we never had before.
I have to say, I found that really fascinating. We hear so much about the dangers of artificial intelligence, but this is a field where it clearly seems to have benefits for all of us. Dr. Druker says it's incredible the way AI allows researchers like him to leap forward with new discoveries.
Well, let me give you an example. When I first started out in the lab, it was a long time ago, if I sequenced one gene in the human genome, 1 out of 30,000 genes, that was a 10-week project, and it was an amazing accomplishment. 1 gene out of 30,000. 2001, the first human genome, all 30 genes, all 30,000 genes was sequenced at a cost of about $100 million. About 10 years ago, you could sequence the entire human genome for $10,000. Now, I can take a tumor and I can sequence each individual cell, tens of thousands of cells, their entire genome, and with barcoding, I can identify each individual cell in that cancer.
Wow.
So now 30,000 cells, 30,000 genes, that's massive amounts of data from one cancer.
And is that like from a cell being fed into a computer?
Yes.
Because you're not looking at it under a microscope.
No, it's being fed into a machine and the machine spits out all that data. Now our job is to try to analyze it and make sense of it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, wow is, and even for somebody like me to look at this technology, it's way beyond science fiction.
And since the information is now converted into data, it can easily be shared with other researchers around the world. It almost sounds like with AI, the only limit is your imagination for the way it can be used.
It's imagination and data. You need a ton of data, and we're collaborating with any number of people around the world to ensure we have enough data to train the models and then help us design the experiments that are going to make a big difference for people.
And as you were saying that, I was thinking, I imagine the data generally has been out there, but maybe kept in one university or lab, or it's not been centralized.
And I think what everybody realizes is that by collaborating, by combining that data, we're going to solve this problem so much faster. Now, one of the things we did almost a decade ago in another type of leukemia, of lethal leukemia called acute myeloid leukemia, is with support from Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, we collaborated with about 12 to 15 different centers around the country, about 10 or 11 drug companies, and we profiled over 1,000 patient samples in incredible depth, and we've made all that data public. So now if somebody says, is my favorite gene or pathway activated, they can go search that in our database, and instead of having to collect hundreds of samples over years, they can sit down at a computer console and do that experiment.
Wow. Wow. It's fascinating and exciting to think about, I think.
It's truly exciting times for cancer research.
Will there ever be a time where cancer is fully defeated?
You know, I think, in my view, what I want to think about with cancer is that it's no longer feared. I don't think we'll ever eliminate cancer. Much like, I used to say, I used analogies to infectious disease. I've stopped using them because when COVID came along, I was like, whoa. But before COVID, you'd think about infections at what antibiotic do I need? Or, oh, it's a mild cold, it'll run its course. With cancer, I want to get us to the point where when you hear you've got cancer, your mind is numb. I want it to be, you've got cancer, okay, well, what do I need to do to get on with my life? It's not a big deal. For my patients who take Gleevec, that's the way it is for them. And that's what I want for many, many others. But ultimately, I want to make sure we're detecting it early when it's highly curable. And also we need to think about prevention, where we actually, if you don't get cancer, that's always going to be better.
How's that for a glimpse to the future? We also wanted to share some more of your feedback to part one of my interview with Dr. Druker that was on last night. We loved this one from Jill. Normally I have to curse at you at least twice during an episode. Not tonight. Fascinating, encouraging, inspiring story and reporting providing good news for all who are touched by cancer. And as you said in your opening, that's all of us. So extremely proud to be from Oregon with this kind of innovation happening here. And Lucille wrote to us, thank you for airing this story on such an inspiring doctor and his research. My sister-in-law was diagnosed with leukemia at age 50. Today, she's a spunky 83-year-old thanks to Dr. Druker and his Gleevec. And we'll end on this one from Will. My takeaway, what an absolutely inspirational person Dr. Druker is. In a me, me, me society, he is clearly about the we. Bless Dr. Druker. Our society would benefit greatly from more like him.